Welcome back, everyone, to Beyond the Unknown, where we really like to get into some fascinating mysteries.
I'm Olivia Reyes.
And I'm Alex Carter.
And today we are tackling episode 15.
Luis Elizondo, whistleblower or puppet?
Ooh.
We've got a report here that takes us deep into the world of UFOs, government secrecy, and this guy, Elizondo, he's become like a major figure in this whole push for UFO disclosure.
This case is so interesting. I mean, it connects back to, remember some of the past episodes we've done? Remember when we talked about those congressional UFO hearings? So Elizondo's story is all happening while the government's, at least appearing to be more open about UFOs.
Right. And then there's that deep dive we did on skinwalkers at the Pentagon, remember? That book talked about this super secret government program, AATIP, I think it was called. And it had, some crazy similarities to AATIP, the program that Elizondo was in charge of. It makes you want, how far does this all go? How much is the government really involved in all this UFO research?
Well, what's really wild is that this report paints Elizondo as both credible and, controversial. So, you can really interpret his actions in a ton of different ways.
Yeah, get ready, folks, because this one's a real head-scratcher. All right, so let's start unpacking all of this. Let's begin with Elizondo's background. This report, it, really highlights his resume. It's seriously impressive. Army counterintelligence, anti-terrorism missions, work at Guantanamo Bay, and then intelligence work at the Pentagon.
Makes you wonder.
This isn't just some guy in his basement coming up with conspiracy theories. This is, the real deal.
Exactly. That's what makes him such an interesting figure. On the one hand, his background just screams trustworthy. I mean, he's been dealing with top secret information for years. But on the other hand, it also means that he could pull off a super elaborate disinformation campaign.
Oh, for sure.
And so that's the million-dollar question that this report is trying to answer. Is Elizondo legit, or is he a pawn in some bigger game, a game we don't even know about?
Okay, so let's talk about AATIP, because this is really where things get interesting. This program had a budget of $22 million, ran for 5 years, and focused specifically on studying UFOs.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big commitment from the government, especially considering they tried to keep it all hush-hush for so long.
It's $22 billion. That's not chump change. That's a serious amount of money, which suggests they were taking this seriously. And then there's this whole thing about AATIP. Officially, it ended in 2012, but there are all these reports saying it just continued under a bunch of different names. Who knows what else is out there? What other programs or research are they hiding?
And then 2017 hits, and things just explode. Elizondo, I guess, he gets fed up with all the secrecy, the pushback against UFO research, and he resigns. But he doesn't go quietly. He writes us a pretty powerful resignation letter to then Defense Secretary James Mattis.
And that letter, wow. I mean, he just straight up calls out the overwhelming evidence, supporting UFOs. It's basically him saying, you guys are ignoring something huge.
Yeah, and he's out. And the thing is, it doesn't stop there. This resignation, along with this massive New York Times article revealing AATIP, it changes everything. It's boom, suddenly UFOs are front page news. They're not some fringe conspiracy theory anymore. It's the world just woke up and said, wait, what?
And remember, that New York Times article didn't just mention Elizondo and AATIP. It also included accounts from U.S. Navy pilots who had actually encountered these unexplained objects.
Oh, right, yeah.
I mean, that really added a whole other layer of credibility to the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Speaking of Navy pilots, we got to talk about those famous Navy videos. FLIR, gimbal, and go fast. Those grainy images of objects doing these maneuvers that should be impossible. Have you seen these things move?
So what's important to remember about those videos is that, first of all, they were leaked, right? And then the Pentagon actually came out and confirmed that they were real. So now you have to ask yourself, does that make the whole UFO thing more believable because the Pentagon confirmed it? Or is this part of some kind of controlled release of information? Are they trying to shape the narrative, manage how we think about all of this?
It's like they're playing a game, right?
Yeah.
Drip feeding us information.
Exactly.
So this report, it jumps ahead to 2024, and this is where things get interesting. There's this incident that's causing a lot of debate in the whole UFO community. Elizondo is presenting in Philadelphia, and he shows this photograph of what he calls a mothership. and it's described as looking like a floating mini city.
Oh, come on.
I know, right?
That's pretty
Like a
words.
floating mini city. Who wouldn't be excited about that?
Well, I mean, obviously at first it created this huge buzz, especially among people who are like convinced we're not alone, right? But there's a twist,
Oh, no.
and it's a big one.
Okay, tell me.
Okay, so buckle up. This is where the online sleuths come in.
Okay.
And they totally debunked this photo. They tracked it back to this Facebook group, and they found out that it was actually just a reflection of a chandelier.
Oh, no way.
Talk about anticlimactic.
Really?
Yeah.
And gets worse.
Yeah.
To make matters worse for Elizondo, there was this whole issue with, like, the location of the photo. He said it was taken near the U.S. Embassy in Bucharest, Romania, but these online detectives, they figured out the actual location was this power station hundreds of miles away. Not a good look.
Not good at all. So Elizondo is facing a ton of scrutiny. What does he do? He goes on X, formerly Twitter, and he addresses the whole mess.
And I'm guessing he issues an apology.
Yep. Blames the whole thing on a government friend who supposedly gave him the photo. And get this, he even praises the online community for, like, their awesome detective work.
Yeah, that's pretty smart. It's like he's trying to, like, spin this whole thing into a positive, Like, look at me, I'm being transparent.
So it raises the question, does this apology actually make him seem more transparent? Like he's owning up to his mistakes?
Yeah.
Or is this just damage control?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
So where does that leave us? Is Elizondo a whistleblower bravely trying to, expose the truth? Or is he like a puppet being used by these powerful forces?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's something even more complicated than that.
I think it's a puzzle, that's for sure. And I think we're really just getting started. Welcome back to Beyond the Unknown. We are continuing our deep dive into this fascinating and often perplexing world of Luis Elizondo.
Yeah, as we were talking about in that first part, this report really digs into the question of Elizondo's motives, right? Is he really trying to bring UFO secrets to light, or is there something else going on? It's a tough one.
And this is where it gets even more interesting. Remember, Elizondo's background is in intelligence and counterintelligence. He spent years, working in environments where information is very carefully controlled. It's, manipulated. I mean, that's his bread and butter.
So we can't just take his word for it. We need to consider that maybe he's using his skills to, like, shape the narrative in a way that that benefits someone or, something else.
Exactly. We have to at least be open to the possibility that he's playing a role, maybe even unknowingly, in some much larger game. It's like trying to solve a puzzle, but some of the pieces are like intentionally missing.
It's like he could be a disinformation agent instead of a real whistleblower.
That's one way to interpret it, but it's also possible that he's operating in this, gray area. Maybe he's genuinely trying to expose the truth, but he's also bound by, like, all this intense secrecy that surrounds these programs, right? It's a very delicate balance.
So, like, he could be playing both sides, like trying to nudge the public towards awareness while still protecting certain secrets.
Precisely. And that makes it incredibly hard to figure out, what his true intentions actually are. We're left with a puzzle where, like, the pieces don't quite fit together.
That definitely adds another layer of complexity to this whole thing. So what other insights does this report offer? Like, where do we go from here?
Well, the report digs into a few key events that really shed light on, like, Elizondo's approach and how tangled this whole web really is. For instance, remember those Navy UFO videos we talked about?
Right.
The ones that were leaked and the Pentagon confirmed?
Yeah, those were wild, especially when the Pentagon came out and said, yep, those are real. I mean, why would they do that? The Pentagon is famous for, like, keeping things under wraps.
It is strange, isn't it? Why would they suddenly confirm that those videos were authentic? It seems to contradict their usual approach of, downplaying UFO sightings, almost like they were forced to acknowledge something.
Maybe they were trying to, like, get ahead of the story, like control the narrative before things got out of hand.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very real possibility. By confirming the videos, they, acknowledge that there are unexplained things out there, but they also got to, frame the conversation on their own terms. It's a classic way to, manage public perception, right? Avoid any panic. Avoid too many questions.
But then why release them at all? If they were so worried about, secrecy, wouldn't it have been easier to just deny everything, keep it all hush-hush?
And this is where, Elizondo's role becomes really intriguing. Some people believe that he might have been involved in orchestrating the leak of those videos. Maybe he was trying to like force the Pentagon's hand, make them admit that UFOs are real.
So he's like playing some kind of strategic game,
Yeah.
using leaks and carefully timed disclosures to like push the conversation forward.
That's one way to look at it. And it shows that Elizondo isn't just some, passive observer in all of this. He's actively shaping events, using his knowledge and connections to try and, influence how we perceive this phenomenon.
But wouldn't that make him like incredibly vulnerable? I mean, if he pushes too hard, wouldn't he risk exposing himself and maybe even putting, sensitive information at risk? That's a dangerous game.
Absolutely. And that's what makes his story so captivating. He's walking this tightrope, right? Trying to balance this desire for disclosure with the need to protect himself and potentially, vital information. Mm. It's a high-stakes game, and it has no clear winners or losers.
This deep dive is really making me rethink everything I thought I knew about Elizondo. There's so much more to him than meets the eye.
It's not black and white, right?
Yeah.
There are all these layers of, intrigue, conflicting motivations. It's a tangled web for sure.
So where do we go from here? Like, how do we even begin to unravel this whole thing? I mean, there's so much secrecy and confusion surrounding this topic.
Well, that's what we're going to explore in the final part of this deep dive. We need to look at Elizondo's actions in a broader context. We need to consider the history of government secrecy when it comes to UFOs. And by the end, we'll leave you with some thought-provoking questions to consider as you continue to explore this fascinating subject.
Welcome back to Beyond the Unknown. We've been digging deep into the world of Luis Elizondo, and it's been quite a ride.
It really has. From his incredible background to his controversial actions, this report leaves us with way more questions than answers. It's like we're trying to solve a puzzle, but half the pieces are missing.
Yeah, exactly. So as we wrap up this episode, let's kind of zoom out a bit, look at the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. What does Elizondo's story tell us about how the government handles UFOs? I mean, both historically and what they're doing now.
Well, I think if we look at Elizondo's story and we try to connect it to the bigger picture, I think it's clear this isn't just some random event. This is part of a very long and complicated history of, government secrecy and maybe even, you could say, selective truth-telling when it comes to UFOs.
Right. Remember way back when we talked about Project Blue Book? That was the Air Force's, official investigation into UFOs back in the 50s and 60s. Mm. And even though they presented it as this serious scientific effort, a lot of people believe that it was really just a cover-up, right? Like a way to debunk UFO sightings while secretly studying them behind closed doors.
It really does seem like that pattern of, secrecy has continued even as more and more people are getting interested in UFOs. Yeah. Remember that episode where we talked about how UFO information is getting classified more and more these days? It's like they're actively trying to make it harder to get to the truth.
Yeah. It feels like there's a real effort to keep us in the dark, to control the narrative, and stop people from really understanding what's going on.
And that brings us right back to Elizondo. Is he part of this system of control? Or is he fighting against it? Is he a whistleblower, a puppet, or something else entirely?
I mean, this report doesn't really give us, clear-cut answers, right? But it definitely opens a window into this secretive world of UFO research, and it really shows just how complicated the people involved are. I mean, their motives are just so hard to pin down.
And I think ultimately we're still left with, those same questions that humans have been asking for centuries, like what are these things in our skies? Where do they come from? And, what do they want?
Maybe someday we'll have those answers.
Yeah.
But until then, I mean, the search for the truth continues. And we'll be here on Beyond the Unknown to explore all the twists and turns along the way.
And, as you go deeper into this topic, just remember to be open-minded, but also skeptical. Question everything. Look at things from different perspectives. Don't be afraid to come to your own conclusion.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you with one final thought to, ponder. What if Elizondo is actually working for the government, like some people believe? What would their goal be in putting him out there? What message are they trying to send? And, and what does it mean for us as we try to understand, our place in the universe?
Keep those questions in mind as you continue your own search for the truth. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic that's sure to challenge your assumptions and broaden your horizons.